Who was the Pope who made the calendar that we still use to this day?
Gregory.
Pope Gregory the Great, yeah, built a calendar that we still use to this day. Who was the Pope who persuaded Attila the Hun not to attack Rome?
They're told who?
Who Attila the Hun, who was one of the popes, went out and taught, Pope Leo, persuaded Attila the Hun to not attack Rome. Now, who was the Babylonian king who carried the kingdom of Judah captive to Babylon? Not Hammurabi, King Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh,
Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, famous for some stories about it from the book of Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar carried.
Pope Leo? What did Pope Leo do?
Pope Leo persuaded Attila the Hun, this Asian man, to not attack Rome. All right. Muslims start their calendar from what event? The flight of Muhammad. Yeah, and it occurred in the date is 622 CE. All right, 622 CE. All right.
Babylonians changed.
Didn't Nebuchadnezzar, I'm sorry, he captured Jerusalem?
He captured Jerusalem and carried captive. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, he carried some folk to Babylon. Now, who was the Persian king who allowed them to return back home? This goes back a ways, I know it, back to August. Persian king who allowed them to return home was King Cyrus the Great. Thank you. King Cyrus the Great. Now, Greece. Who was the man who ran 26 miles to tell his people that they had won a big battle? He ran the marathon. Yeah, he ran from the marathon to Athens. Yeah, he ran the marathon. His name was Thucydides.
Yes.
Thucydides. They had a commercial about him about 10 or so years ago. And it said to Thucydides, "Oh, Thucydides, sorry about that, you could have emailed." The voice on the commercial was obviously a black man's voice. But anyway, yes, Thucydides, if you wished, you could have emailed. Let's see. All right. Yeah, let's see if I can
Dipides.
find. Oh,
He also
yeah.
played left field for the Braves.
Okay, here it is. All right. Let's see. Try to remember the difference between Romanesque and Gothic. Someone received 3 questions about this, and there'll be matching questions. Romanesque on the one hand, Gothic on the other. All right, leaving that. Oh yes, one other question, and I'm now looking at the final exam. The Bulgars, where did they originally come from before they settled in Bulgaria?
Central Asia.
Central Asia, yeah. Again, it wasn't just Mongolia, but also what is today Turkestan and a few of those places. Central Asia.
New Jersey.
Again, those people would have more babies than they could handle with that climate and that land, and they were forced to squeezed out. Just like in Arabia, that desert would they'd sometimes produce more people than they could handle, and they were eventually some of them were forced out. Now, let's see. Oh yes, what became, this is very important, what became the official religion of Russia? And I mentioned earlier, couldn't separate church from state. What became the official religion of Russia?
The Greek Orthodox.
Greek and Orthodox. And talk about no separation of church and state. When the communists took over, Lenin appointed the Patriarch of Moscow. I mean, if you can imagine, Lenin didn't even believe in God, but Lenin appointed the Patriarch of Moscow. And during the 70 years when the communists controlled Russia, the Orthodox Church never rose up and protested one act of the communist government. Not one time. This is documented, folk.
That was Vladimir, wasn't it?
Vladimir was the man who joined the Orthodox Church, and when he joined, most of his people joined with him. Oh yeah, I mentioned him last lecture. Who was the Israeli lawgiver?
The Pharaoh?
The Israeli lawgiver. The man who gave the Jews their law. I mentioned him last time. The black people should remember
Yes,
that.
I do, yes.
Yeah, because he was the blacks' favorite Bible character during the slave days. And I'll tell you in a minute why. Who was anybody know? His name was Moses. Now,
Did I not just say
why was Moses the black people's favorite Bible character? Anybody?
Let the people go.
He was the one who freed the slaves. He went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." Yeah, let my people go. Yes, and he freed the slaves, and the blacks would gather around and they'd preach about Moses and talk about Moses. Yeah, he was their favorite Bible character, but he was a Jewish lawgiver.
He was big in,
That's a long time.
All right. Okay, one
I know
reason
this.
why Buddhism did not remain.
My favorite Bible.
Why did Buddhism not remain so popular in India?
Samson.
egalitarianism.
Egalitarianism. The Buddhist is egalitarian and Hinduism is not egalitarian. Now, I did have a girl from India tell me that Hinduism is egalitarian. You know, they'll tell you that when they're talking to one of us Westerners. Just like they'll tell you that they're monotheists also.
He's so slick.
Anyway, egalitarian. Hinduism is not egalitarian. All right. Who was the first pagan king to convert to Roman Catholic Christianity?
Roman Catholic.
Yeah, see, the Constantine converted to Arian Christianity.
Justinian.
Not Justinian, it was Clovis.
Oh,
Clovis, yeah. See, all these Byzantine kings at first converted to Arianism. Eventually, Arianism completely died out. Now, this is something some of you will see in the final, and I put it on your study guide. Arianism taught that Jesus was inferior to God, he'd been created after God, and was not as strong as God. The Catholics and Protestants alike teach that Jesus was completely, fully, totally God and fully, totally man. Fully human and fully divine. That he was both. That he had all of God's power and he had existed all the way back to the beginning with God. Arianism, though, is of all the beliefs that Christians hold, Arianism is one you'll hardly find among Christians anymore. But it was very strong back in the earlier days, particularly in the Middle East. All right, now this one you should know by now. Why did old maids tend to not die so much during the Black Death?
cats.
They kept
They kept
cats.
kitty cats around, and they couldn't feed the cats all the cats wanted, so the cats had to go out and hunt. And everybody knows about cats, even if they're well fed, they'll still hunt.
Boy,
And some of them just love to kill. Unfortunately, some of them, when you feed them too much, they don't kill as much
That's
as you'd
what
like them
cats
to.
do.
But
They're evil.
if you keep cats around, you can expect to not see very many snakes and not very many rodents around. They keep the rodents away, they keep the snakes away. Let's see.
I don't have time for foolishness now, Benny.
All right. Oh yeah. Who were the two Catholic monarchs who finally drove the Muslims out of Spain? Yeah, very famous in American history. Two Catholic monarchs who drove the Moors out of Spain, and the year was 1492.
Isabella and Ferdinand.
Ferdinand, yeah, I knew that. Ferdinand and Isabella, and they could not help Columbus until they had finished the job of driving the Moors out of Spain. Ferdinand and Isabella, and Ferdinand was not interested in helping, but Isabella had a bigger kingdom than her husband's. They both were independent monarchs. When they died, they passed the throne to their one son. Anyway, Ferdinand and Isabella. And let's see. Stupa. Stupas. What is the purpose of a stupa? What country are we talking?
That was India.
India.
They were Buddhist monasteries.
Buddhist places of holy sites where the Buddha had been. Yes, holy places among Buddhists. Now, oh yes, something I did not mention, it was on the study guide. Unfortunately, Crusaders often turned on Jewish communities. And they would sometimes surround a Jewish community and set the Jewish community on fire and raise their hands and praise God hilariously while that the people inside were being burned to death or screaming their last breath. I mean, this is just an unfortunate fact, folk. But I meant to mention it, but I am mentioning it now. And it's on the study guide for those of us. Much too often, the Crusaders resorted to, because they blamed Jews for all the problems Europe was having. They blamed Jews for the Black Death, especially since Jews did not get it as much as other people. And this made the people hate the Jews even more. And the Jews wound up, now this is going to sound bad, but they wound up fleeing to Poland, to Estonia, particularly Poland and East Germany, to that region of Europe, because there they found haven. But this is basically setting them up for the Holocaust that came in the 1940s. But they all fled England, fled France, fled Spain, and fled Portugal, and congregated around Poland. Then the Polish people turned on them. And now, the Russians went into communism. The Tsarist Russia was anti-Semite. When the communists took over, the communists were not anti-Semite. For whatever else you say about Stalin, when Stalin voted with Israel in the United Nations, and Stalin condemned Hitler for his anti-Semitism, they were not anti-Semite. But anyway, this is some history that you will run into, and it is important because anti-Semitism is making a comeback on the world scene. I'm hard against it, very hard against it. So don't think that I'm encouraging it, I'm not. To me, it helps bring destruction on the people who practice it. Just ask Adolf Hitler if you could. All right. Never mind. All right, Merlin. Yeah, I think I mentioned Merlin. Merlin was whom?
Wizard.
He was a wizard. And what country? England, yeah, wizard in England, and he was the one who helped Arthur become king of England. In British folklore, his father was a fallen angel and his mother an earth woman. But his mother went to church every time it was open, and Merlin became a Christian rather than becoming Satan's antichrist like Satan had hoped. That's the story. So Merlin became a good sorcerer, if you believe there is such a thing. All right. What was the main difference between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Catholic Church? Number one difference.
Well, according to my Catholic education, it was the infallibility of the Pope.
It's the Pope. The difference is the Pope. The Eastern Orthodox do not recognize the Pope as being anything more than a Bishop of Rome. And I want to say about being Bishop of Rome, the first 400 years, that's all the popes were, as Bishop of Rome. And our present Pope, when he first took office, said, I never want to forget that I'm first and foremost Bishop of Rome. So he still respects that title, that he said, I'm Bishop of Rome first. And keep in mind, he was an Argentinian, not an Italian. But he said, I always want to keep in mind, I'm Bishop of Rome first and foremost. All right. Oh, yeah. The scholastics' favorite topic of study was
Theology. Theology.
Oh,
Well, it's actually theology.
excellent. Good answer, but it's not one of the choices. They like to study the difference between faith and reason, but the main
Yes,
man,
yes.
which man did they like the most?
Aristotle.
Aristotle.